NASA is the United States Space Agency that deals with all U.S. endeavors in extraterrestrial exploration and research. They are known for some of mankind's greatest achievements, but in recent years have become laughably confused and seem to have no clear direction anymore. In this video, I will go over the history of NASA and why they've been declining in recent years. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA for short, is a government agency that deals with America's ventures into space. It was created on July 29, 1958, as a follow-up to the previous space administration, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, or NACA. It was created by the Eisenhower administration because Congress saw the success of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviets a year earlier, and were fearful of America losing their dominance. This commenced the famous space race between the United States and Soviet Union, where the two countries would compete for technological dominance. One of the first successes in the space race was Project Mercury. The program was designed to put the first man in space, ideally before the Soviets. However, even though they were able to launch the first American, Alan Shepard, into space on May 5, 1961, they were beat by the Soviets, who only a month earlier put Yuri Gagarin into space. It was a huge blow to American pride. Not only did the Reds put the first satellite into space, but now the first moon. This invigorated not only the public, but Congress to fully back NASA and their efforts to crush the Soviets. In effect, their budget went from less than 0.5% of the federal budget in 1959 to over 4% in 1966. Also born out of the perceived losing of the space race were two new programs. Project Gemini, which would perform long-duration flights, extravehicular activity, and spacecraft docking, which would also lay the groundwork for the Apollo missions, whose primary objective was to land the first man on the moon.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
The Apollo program began when President John F. Kennedy asked Congress to commit the government to put a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s. This would be one of the most expensive U.S. scientific programs, costing about $223 billion in today's amount. After the rocky start of Apollo 1, which was a catastrophic mission failure and multiple month-long hiatus, the program started to pick up again. The first crew flight happened on Apollo 7, and on the next mission, the crew would fly around the moon. It was around this time when NASA's budget peaked at around 4.5% of the annual federal budget. It was only going to go down from here. This was the time when public curiosity also peaked. Then the time came for Apollo 11, which was going to be the mission to land the men on the moon. After Apollo 11 successfully delivered Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the surface of the moon in front of an estimated 650 million people, gathered on their televisions to watch mankind's greatest achievement, an end to the space race. After Apollo 11's success, NASA's budget was cut drastically as public support for the program dwindled. 6 more moon landings were planned, but to the general public, landing on the moon felt like an everyday and very expensive occurrence. The only other time the Apollo program would garner a massive amount of coverage, but not even close to the moon landings coverage, was the safe return of Apollo 13 astronauts. Apollo 13 was an impressive feat of coordination that saved 3 astronauts' lives on their doomed spacecraft, and even that only interested about 40 million people. The writing was clearly on the wall, and for all future moon landings. Apollo program was ended with Apollo 17 on December 19, 1972. This would be the last time humans would leave Earth's orbit to visit another world. After the retirement of the Apollo program in 1972, NASA leaders realized that their funding from the government was declining. So they thought to save costs, they needed to switch to using a reusable vehicle. The concept of a shuttle was explored in years prior, but not realized until 1972. The space shuttles consisted of 2 reusable solid rocket boosters, the shuttle itself, and a giant disposable external fuel tank. The shuttle was projected to have over 150 successful launches over 15 years, which would be a marvelous feat and would be used to construct projects like the International Space Station. However, due to delays, the program was only flew 135 missions over the span of 30 years, a far cry from its projected goals. On top of this was the program's reusability aspect was faulty at best. The total cost of the Shuttles program was $196 billion, which was about $450 million per launch. For comparison, SpaceX's fully reusable Falcon 9 costs about $30 million per launch. After extensively relying on the Space Shuttle program, NASA retired it on August 31, 2011. After 2011, NASA worked on many projects, the first of which was to put the first man on Mars. To do this, it began developing a Space Launch System, or SLS, which would fulfill the role as launch vehicle. Over time, they slowly upgraded the SLS and improved new tech like ion thrusters. However, the mission directive of NASA was changed under President Trump to land the first woman and another man on the moon by 2024. This would become the Artemis program, which is still NASA's mission directive as of now. From there, they plan to build another space station orbiting the moon, which will be used to launch astronauts deeper into space or to Mars. But for years now, all NASA seems to do is plan and say empty promises without action. The real question is, how did we get here? Where did they go wrong?
It's never ogre.
Downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral.
How did NASA go from
We choose to go to the moon in this decade
to saying in 2017 that humans might be on Mars by the 2030s? The simple answer is money. The decades following the Apollo program saw a massive decline in the federal funding of NASA. But the idea doesn't print the full picture of why NASA is declining. Much like how after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 left America without an enemy, the public without direction, the end of the space race, and the refocusing on other affairs like Vietnam, Watergate, or the oil crisis of the 70s certainly drew a lot of people away from the fantasy of spaceflight and back to the harsh reality of life. Another factor in the downward spiral is how nowadays children don't want to be astronauts when they grow up and instead want to be YouTubers or streamers. Only 18% of NASA's 1,800 employees are under the age of 40. Government agencies that aren't in the prime are not interesting enough for younger people to want to work at. Unlike SpaceX, which is a growing company with a trendy figurehead that is Elon Musk. This brings me to my last point. NASA has for the last few decades been plagued with the sluggish bureaucracy syndrome. This is where politicians will give NASA a new direction and goals, but whether that be because they have lack of understanding or care, or because it is imperative that we endlessly fund the military so we can have endlessly fight wars in the Middle East, NASA isn't given enough resources to complete any goals before the next administration comes in and changes their direction again. For example, during the Bush-Cheney administration, NASA focused on the Constellation program, which was going to return humans to the moon by 2020. Then, during the Obama administration, he shifted the focus to put men on Mars by creating the SLS. Finally, during the Trump administration, focus shifted again to the Artemis program, which was planning on putting men on the moon again by the 2030s. With all these changes in direction, lack of funding, and public support, it is clear why NASA doesn't seem to be the uncontested champion of space exploration. With the rise of SpaceX and Boeing Company coinciding with the decline of NASA, it is easy to feel like nothing will ever happen in space ever again. But the future is looking up, because major breakthroughs in the industry are happening, and it's only a matter of time before humans leave Earth's orbit again.